Regenerative agriculture isn't a checklist or a finish line. It's a decision-making process you repeat over and over as you learn what your land can actually do. In this episode, I'm walking you through the framework we use on our high desert ranch to turn regenerative principles into real-world management decisions with goats and cattle. We'll talk about learning without copy-pasting, asking, how can this work here, instead of, this will never work, and how we break big, overwhelming goals, like reducing winter hay feeding and extending the grazing season, into practical tests we can evaluate and adjust. Let's get to it. Hey friends, welcome to the Get Goatwise podcast. Are you longing to raise goats and other animals for food but don't know where to start? Do you want to be more self-sufficient and less dependent on the grocery store? Do you wish you had a mentor to walk you through raising livestock? Hi, I'm Millie, animal scientist, cattle girl turned goat rancher, co-owner of Dry Creek Livestock, and simple living enthusiast. For 15 years, I've been on a mission to raise all of our own meat, eggs, and dairy. Here, we'll talk about raising goats and other homestead livestock, how to create sustainable animal management systems that actually work, and a bit of off-grid life with kids and livestock. If you're ready to take control of your food supply, raise livestock with confidence, and provide your family with the most nourishing meat, eggs, and dairy available, you're in the right place. Kick off your muck boots, pour a cup of coffee, and let's talk livestock. Hey friend, I'd love your help spreading the word about the Get Goatwise podcast. If this show has helped you, would you take a minute to leave a review? It really makes a difference, and it's easy. Just go to Get Goatwise on Apple Podcasts, scroll down to Ratings and Reviews, click on the purple words that say Write a Review, then give me some stars and tell me what you think. And as a thank you, I've got a free kidding due date chart waiting for you. Just head to getgoatwise.com/kidding-chart. It's on the honor system. You leave a review, grab your chart, and know that you're helping other goat owners find the show. Here's what's happening on the ranch this week. We picked up the new dairy does, 3 beautiful alpine does from a wonderful family just a couple hours away. I'm looking forward to working with them more in the future. The does are in great condition and they're settling in nicely. They're bred to kid in April, so they'll be the first ones to kid in 2026. It warmed up last week and all of our snow is gone, so we're still feeding inside the night trap. We may have to feed outside the night trap once just to see what the goats do without snow on the ground to stop them from traveling and regrazing the entire pasture. If they stay close, maybe we can go ahead with feeding out so the hay litter and manure can actually do some good on our pastures outside of the night trap. I'm loving the warm up, but it does change our plans up a bit. We went to look at a hay trailer to buy for another project, but there was some miscommunication and it was already sold. Since we'd driven nearly 100 miles, I didn't want to waste the trip and we were pulling the big flatbed trailer. So we stopped on the way home and got some straw bales. These will be used for our soil building projects as well as bedding for raised steer. Today, I want to talk about something a little more big picture than usual, but still very practical. We're going to talk about how we make regenerative decisions on our ranch, how we learn, how we test ideas, and why regenerative agriculture is much more of a process than a destination. There's a lot of talk online about regenerative practices, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, and it can start to feel like there's a right way and a wrong way, or like there's a finish line you're supposed to reach. What I want to do today is slow that down and show you what this actually looks like on the ground for us in our climate with our land base, our animals, and our constraints. My hope is that this episode gives you a way of thinking, not something to copy, but a framework you can use on your own place. First, let's clear something up. Regenerative agriculture is not a checklist. It's not a label you earn, and it's not something you arrive at and then you're done. If you're waiting for the moment when you can say, okay, now we're regenerative, you're probably going to be waiting a long time. In real life, regeneration is a cycle. You learn, you test ideas, you observe what actually happens, and then you adjust. And then you do it again. The people who are doing this the best are still experimenting. They're still trying things. They're still changing their minds. That's not a failure. That's the work. Before I get into examples, I want to lay out the basic loop we operate from. We don't always name it, but this is how decisions actually get made. It looks like this. Learn, compare context, clarify goals, test, observe, adjust, repeat. And that first step, learning, matters more than most people realize. Before observation ever comes into play, there has to be learning. That learning might come from books, research, podcasts, conferences, or conversations with people who are further down the road. Learning matters. It saves you from reinventing the wheel. But here's the caution. Learning without context is dangerous. I'll give you a clear example. I love Gabe Brown's work. I'm on my third time reading through Dirt to Soil. His principles are solid, and I've learned a lot from him. But Gabe's growing season is about twice as long as ours. He gets nearly double the precipitation. His land is farm ground and prairie. Our place is high desert, sagebrush dominant ground, some cropland that was reseeded to pasture about 40 years ago, and sub-irrigated meadow down in the river bottoms. So no, I can't just copy what Gabe does and expect the same results. But that does not mean his work isn't relevant here. Instead of saying, that will never work in my climate, we ask, how do these principles apply in my climate? Principles transfer, practices don't always. Once we've learned and filtered ideas through our environment, the next step is getting very clear on big picture goals and real constraints. For us, our biggest goal is simple and very practical. We want to reduce supplemental hay to the absolute minimum by extending our grazing season in both spring and fall. This is the single biggest thing we can do to increase profitability. So every regenerative decision we make gets run through that filter. Now let's talk constraints and one big opportunity. We are moisture limited. We can't afford to let water run off or evaporate if there's a way to prevent it. Wildlife pressure is real. Winter is long, cold, and unforgiving. And we run both goats and cattle. I actually see that as a huge long-term benefit. Nature doesn't create monocultures, not in plants and not even in grazing species. Different animals impact the land differently, and that diversity is a strength. But I want to be honest, especially in the beginning, running multiple species adds complexity. What works cleanly for cattle doesn't always translate to goats. Fencing, predator pressure, winter management, and grazing behavior all force different decisions. A lot of regenerative systems are designed with cattle in mind first, so we're constantly adapting principles to work for goats as well. That doesn't mean the principles are wrong, it just means the application has to fit the animals you're actually managing. At first glance, reducing hay and extending grazing sounds overwhelming. So we break it down. To graze longer, we need more forage. To grow more forage, we need more water held in the soil. To hold water, we need organic matter and ground cover. To build soil biology, we need carbon and moisture. The most important goal right now is ground cover, as that will increase organic matter, improve water infiltration rate, and allow seeds to germinate and grow. And all those things contribute to the soil microbiome and overall improved soil biology. And because we'd like to see progress sooner rather than decades from now, we know we need some kind of jump start. Once you break the problem down far enough, it stops feeling paralyzing and starts feeling workable. One of the ideas we're testing right now involves straw. The goal with straw bales is not to block water, it's to slow it down. We want to give water more time to infiltrate instead of running off. Traditionally, this would be done with swales. I'm not opposed to swales, but before we start digging up fragile pasture, we want to understand how water actually moves across our land. So we're using the straw bales in strategic locations to slow water, watch what happens, and learn where the real flow paths are. If it makes sense later, we can make more permanent changes. This is a big part of our decision-making process. Test first, commit later. This is where observation really comes in, and I want to say this clearly. Nature is the best teacher you'll ever have. Books matter, research matters, other people's experience matters, but nothing teaches you like watching what actually happens on your land. We've been doing intensive rotational grazing with the goats for about 5 years now, and we are absolutely seeing changes. But before I talk about those changes, let me tell you about the observation that led to the straw bale experiment. After the goats grazed through one of our pastures in 1 acre daily moves, we noticed that there was a nice layer of thatch and manure spread across the land. And then we had a rainstorm, and the runoff started, which you expect with bare exposed ground. But what I observed after the rain was very interesting. The thatch accumulated at the base of the existing plants and slowed water passage where it accumulated. I think that's by design. When that thatch accumulates at the base of the plants, it holds water for the plants that are already there. And each time that event happens again, that thatch pile grows further and further from the base of each plant, ultimately connecting with the plant next to it, so that we build a layer of organic matter on top of the soil. So this is just nature doing what nature does. With the straw bales, we're giving more area for thatch and things to accumulate while also slowing that water flow. So we're doing what is already happening on the individual plant scale. We're making it bigger. So I'm excited to see how this experiment turns out. We may find out that we don't need to build permanent swells, that the bales do the job sufficiently. Okay, back to the changes that we saw from the intensive rotational grazing. Seedlings are popping up in areas that used to be bare between mature plants. Where we've used chicken tractors, the grass is greener, thicker, and more palatable. And we know that because the goats head straight for those areas when they're available. The summer bale grazing we did 2 years ago is showing some of the most dramatic results we've seen. Again, the goats confirm it for us. Those are some of the first places they choose to graze. This is where you can really learn if you're paying attention. Observation doesn't have to be mystical or complicated. The land and the animals will tell you what's working. Now, here's where honesty matters. Even though bale grazing created some of our biggest improvements, season-long bale grazing in winter is not a good fit for us right now. Most bale grazing systems rely on electric fencing using fiberglass posts that are easier to deal with in frozen ground and a single wire for cattle. Well, goats won't respect a single wire. And to keep the goats contained, we would need to use our electric netting, which, as we've discussed many times on this podcast, is not feasible in freezing temperatures because the posts freeze into the ground. If we were bale grazing with just cattle, that would probably be manageable, but goats are different and they force different decisions. But we have a bigger problem outside of electric fence. Setting bales out across a pasture would be an open invitation to every elk in the valley. And if you've dealt with elk, you know they can destroy a stackyard overnight. So we adapt. Our alternative to bale grazing is feeding outside the night trap so that the feeding itself becomes a soil building tool. The idea is to spread seed under the hay, let the animals press it into the ground with their hooves, fertilize it with manure and urine, and leave behind organic matter and cover in leftover hay litter. We haven't fully implemented this yet. Ideally, we want snow cover so the animals stay where they're supposed to be, and the snow enhances seed-to-soil contact. If snow doesn't come soon, we may have to go for it and adjust as we go. That's part of regeneration too. planning, waiting when you can, and adapting when conditions don't cooperate. This step has taken years of preparation, securing fencing, eliminating risk areas, and making sure the animals can't get into trouble all had to happen first. We've looked into getting a smaller version of a no-till drill like Gabe Brown uses, but right now it doesn't pencil out. Our growing season is short, the investment is high, and I don't think we'd see the full benefit until soil cover and moisture retention improve. That doesn't mean never, it just means not yet. We're also realistic about seeding. Perennial seed is expensive, but it's what everybody uses around here. And in our area, success rates vary wildly. I'd rather build soil for a year or two using annuals and then invest in perennials once the ground is better prepared. Again, process over perfection, and we'll evaluate as we go. We're not irreversibly committed to any plan as far as seeding. I'm sharing all of this not because we've figured it out, but because we haven't. There isn't a regeneration textbook that fits every climate and environment. That's why regeneration is a process, not an I've arrived moment. The very best regenerative practitioners are still learning, testing ideas, and adjusting every year. And if you're paying attention, working within your constraints, and letting the land teach you, you're doing the work. I hope this episode encourages you to stop waiting until you have it all figured out, and instead start observing, testing small ideas, and making decisions that fit your land, your animals, and your season. Regeneration isn't about arriving, it's about learning and adjusting over time. If you have questions, you can email me at Millie, M-I-L-L-I-E, at drycreekpastures.com, or come on over to the free community at getgoatwise.com/community and start a conversation. See you next week. Hey there, thanks for listening today. I'm so glad you're here. If this episode helped you or encouraged you in some way, share the link with your homesteading friends. And if you really want to help me out, click on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. You can connect with me on Instagram or email linked in the show notes, and meet me back here soon for more Get Goat Wise.